Hello, comrades, and welcome back to Ushanka Show. Здравствуйте, товарищи. Well, I want to talk a little bit more about communism. I believe I already covered that topic several times, especially in my Soviet vlog videos, that Soviet Union never had communism. So people who claim that communism is a danger and we don't want to repeat the same situation that happened with Soviet Union here in the United States, they make a assumption or just bluntly lie that Soviet Union had communism. We never had communism in Soviet Union. Official terminology by the end of the life of Soviet Union that we had developed socialism, развитой социализм. So like socialism was very developed. Like you have a nicely developed muscles, but you can't reach communism. You're not at the level of the Olympics. Olympics, so you're good, but not good enough. But we actually had a pretty decent plan how to achieve socialism and when, and so then we're going to talk about it today. In order to look at the Soviet plans for building communism, we need to roll our tape. You remember we used to have tapes so we could roll them back? So we need to roll our tape all the way back to October of 1961, and the leader of the Communist Party and the Soviet Union is Nikita Khrushchev, and he had historical speech on the 22nd gathering съезд of the Communist Party. That's where the Central Committee presented the new plans and new ideas, and then people vote for it, and of course they get 100% yes votes. So that's when Nikita Khrushchev announced that we're going to have a communism in the Soviet Union in the near future, not in 100 years, not in 200 years, but in 20 years. So in 1961, the plan was to build the society in Soviet Union, to build the economy, because you can't have communism without proper economical, you can't have communism without proper economical base. So the plan was to create all that in 20 years. So on October 1961, more exactly October 31st, the last day of October of 1961, Comrade Khrushchev announced that today's generation of Soviet people will live under communism. So that was a huge thing. So it's not far away future. It's gonna be really, really close. So the plan was quite simple. It had two stages, so we have 2 decades away, right? 20 years. So in first decade, from 1961 to 1970, Soviet Union gonna create the base for communism. So they were gonna develop economy and overcome United States as the #1 industrial power in the world, and will improve the lifestyle of the Soviet people. So everyone will have plenty of everything. All the collective farms will be turned into highly productive and highly, they call it высокодоходные, so even can have a high income enterprises. So and generally all the needs of Soviet people will be satisfied, including everyone will have proper housing. One of the huge problem that Khrushchev inherited from Stalin era is shortage of good housing. A lot of people lived in rooms. They didn't have their own apartments. They lived in dorms or so-called barracks, which I even don't know how to translate to English. So there'll be this 1 or 2 story basic building, which basically had only rooms. Then they had a common kitchens and outhouse, like big outhouse. So there'll be maybe 20, 30 families living in this basic building. No running water, just electricity. And everyone used a big outhouse, communal outhouse. So that was a barrack. So Khrushchev, that was one of his big changes that he implemented in Soviet Union. He started pushing for building massively large amount of cheap apartments, so put people in a better living conditions. Also in the first 10 years, the hard physical labor should disappear, and Soviet Union was supposed to turn into the country with the shortest working day. So that was quite a lot of optimistic assumptions, and I'm kind of curious about heavy physical labor that is going to disappear, which I guess means automatization. Uh, there's a lot of jobs that at that time in 60s and 70s, like coal miners, people that cut trees, a lot of work was done manual, but that was the plan to improve working conditions for Soviet people and have it all done by 1970. Stage number two, which is from 1971 till 1980. So I was born right in the beginning of stage number two in 1971. Unfortunately, or fortunately, at that stage, Khrushchev already wasn't in power. He was removed, and Brezhnev was the leader. And I believe actually Khrushchev passed away in September of 1971. But the plan was that the second 10 years, there'll be created a materially technical base for the communism. I don't know if I'm translating it correctly because I'm looking at the Russian text, but a материально-техническая база. So you got materials and you got technology base for communism, which would provide the изобилие. Another word is like plenty of material and cultural benefits for the whole population. And the Soviet society will approach the level when communism's principle of distribution according to needs will be able to apply. So, you basically come to the point, and it's kind of interesting because right now, if you look at the American society, world society, the productivity goes so much, automatization goes so much, so it comes to the level like there'll be machines building machines to build machines and to build goods. So like we have a conversation about basic income, so people will get paid regardless if they work or not, because just not enough jobs, I guess. And so this is approaching idea of communism, but from the opposite direction. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the whole general concept of communism, and I'm kind of looking at it because I remember studying that back in school, that you approach to the level when you got распределение по потребности. You get distribution according to the needs. So what you need, this is what you're going to get. So that's the idea of communism. And also at that time, there'll be a slow transfer to the общенародная собственность. So like people's, so everyone will own everything. So you don't have a private property anymore. There'll be like people's property. So you don't own apartment, you don't own furniture. It's everyone's. So if you need it, you go get it at the store. After using it, you don't need it anymore. You bring it back to the store. Somebody else will take it. So kind of like that general idea. So that should be happening by 1980. So at that point, there will be complete communism society in the Soviet Union, and complete will be in the next period. So after 1980, we pretty much will have a communism, and we're going to wrap the things up in the next 10 years. So that's the plan. And as we know, we never had a communism built by 1980, and 11 years later, in 1991, Soviet Union quit and stopped existing. So as you see, Comrade Khrushchev was quite an optimist when it came to the communist ideas, and Comrade Stalin never talked about it, building communism, but Comrade Khrushchev, that was his main drive, that Soviet Union will be growing and building its economy, and in 20 years we'll have a society ready for communism. So it's quite interesting. And like a lot of people right now, especially in the former Soviet Union, in Russia right now, talking that Khrushchev betrayed Stalin's idea, and he was the first that started destroying. But if you look at these plans on the 22nd gathering of Communist Party, he was all over for communism and had quite a plan how to achieve. But when he got displaced and Brezhnev took over, there was the language changed, and they just started talking that we have a развитой социализм, so we had a developed socialism. And that's pretty much like, yeah, there is a light in the end of tunnel, but tunnel is very long, so we're gonna just kind of move along and hope that one of the days we'll see the light, and that's when the communism come. But we're gonna kind of similar like Bible, like religion. Jesus coming, but we don't know when. But you need to believe in it, and act accordingly. Give us 10% of your income, and one of these days, Jesus will show up. And same as in Soviet Union, we had our communist religion that hey, you need to work hard for little money, and one of these days the communism will arrive and everything will be fantastic. And as I mentioned earlier about the shortest work day in the world, so the plan was that people will be working 6 hours a day and have 2 days off a week. So instead of 8, they'll work 6 and have 2 days off. And I honestly don't remember. I should do my homework, but I think during Stalin, people had only 1 day off on Sundays. They had to work 6 days in a week. And of course, collective farm workers had to work pretty much every day. One of the ladies, like distant relatives of my mom in the village, she was working the milk farm, so she was milking cows. And she said, cows don't care. It's a holiday or Sunday or Monday. You need to milk them. So she literally worked every single day of her life. She never had days off. So it's kind of interesting. And I'm looking at this illustration. So some of this information I took from the children's book, school book, and it shows in the pictures what's gonna be free of charge in 1980. So when we're basically ready to step into communism. So at that time in 1980, housing like apartments supposed to be free, which they were kind of free, but it was like affordable rent. You never owned an apartment in Soviet Union, so you'll get an apartment, you move in, you pay really little rent plus utilities, but you never could sell the apartment. The only way people could like move to different area or different town will be to do the swap. And I want to make a separate video on that topic because that was quite a pain in the butt. If you live in Kiev and you decided you want to move to Leningrad because your daughter got married and lived there, you can't just sell your apartment in Kiev and buy apartment in Leningrad. You need to post advertisement in Leningrad that you want to swap 1-room apartment in Kiev for 1-room apartment in Leningrad or whatever. And of course, market works everywhere. So if you want to move from the small town to big city, you might have to sacrifice 3-room apartment in Chernigov, small town in Ukraine, for 1-room apartment in Moscow. Or people quietly paid extra money to compensate, like to get upgrade. So of course, you'd never tell government that you get a 1-room apartment in Leningrad and give people 10,000 rubles and in exchange for 1-room apartment in Kiev or something like that. So that was a really challenging thing to move. Besides Propiska, if you watch my channel for a while, you should know that people have to get permission to move. So you don't just go, hey, I'm going to Moscow, and you just move to Moscow. You can't do that. Couldn't do that. You had to get permission, which is propiska, that you are permitted to live in Moscow. On the top of that, you had to do all this movement of exchanges of your apartments. But so we kind of get a little bit distracted here. So besides free housing, in 1980, Soviet people should have a free public transportation. I remember paying 5 kopecks, like 5 cents per ride, pretty much for like bus, trolleybus, and subway. And also people will be getting free lunches in schools and at work. So cafeterias, you just go and take food. You bring food, you don't have to pay anything. All the kindergartens and any special schools will be free of charge. And as well as drugs will be free of charge, as well as health treatments. So if you want to go to some spa to recover from your health issues, that should be also free of charge in 1980. So it's kind of interesting. And there's optimistic view of Comrade Khrushchev that he could build a communism in Soviet Union in a mere 20 years. And as we know it didn't happen. He got removed from power, and as a result, Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. In 30 years after meeting in October 1961, I think it's exactly 30 years and 1 month, I believe in November of 1991, Soviet Union quit to exist. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, don't forget to put likes and share with your friends, and we'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye. And if you love my channel and would like to show your support, please click on the link below this video and become the patron of the Ushanka Show. For as little as $1, you can help us grow and create the new, interesting videos about the life in Soviet Union.